Welcome back to this week's Canon Who, our deep dive into Lily's Boy by Somewhere Sword. So we're looking at chapter 8 this week, and while it may seem quiet on the surface, beneath it there's a current of transformation happening. Harry's magical growth, his shifting friendships, and deepening emotional ties. So let's go take a look at this subtle but powerful developmental chapter. We open to Harry studying in solitude. He's actually looking at wandless magic, and he's got the wizarding wireless on, quietly buzzing in the background, and it kind of just feels cozy. But symbolically, it is a freedom. He is reshaping his relationship with magic itself. He kind of thinks about the idea of wandless magic within the wizarding world, and it's been spoken of as this absolute pentacle of magical power and talent that only extraordinary people can manage. But that doesn't sit right with Harry. He's questioning that assumption, and he kind of links wandless magic back to childhood accidental magic. Is it rather a raw instinct than rare genius? And he kind of takes a look inside himself, like he's recognized these blocks have been gone, but his magic still feels like it's housed in a space too small. It's crammed into his body like he had been crammed into the cupboard under the stairs. And this connection between trauma and magic is striking. And his wanting to grow and his practicing this wandless magic, this is him learning to take up space. Physically, emotionally, magically. And him actually successfully levitating the book. It's not just the idea of successfully doing it, but it's a little bit of healing. He is powerful. Of course, his concentration gets busted by Ron storming in. He's mad at the last third of the Golden Trio, Hermione, and he then stops and realizes that Harry has a wireless. Like, where'd you get that? And Harry can automatically feel the shift in the mood. He recognizes that Ron is showing some jealousy. The expression on his face made sense. His discomfort at Harry's wealth. But the reaction that we usually would see from Harry here would be his giving nature. Of, oh, well, you can have it, and, I'll get a new one, or something to that extent. Not this Harry. Not this Harry. Not anymore. He is no longer shrinking back. Instead of apologizing, he simply invites him along. It's like, well, the Canon's matches next week if you want to listen to it with me. And Harry's not letting Ron and his jealousy of Harry's wealth define him anymore. This is a growth for him. He's learning to acknowledge tension without letting it define who he is and what he wants. He's not cramming himself back into the cupboard. This is him standing up saying, I'm here, I exist. And one of the things that's always bugged me with the jealous streak with Ron is that he never seems to recognize the losses that Harry's had in order for him to have that kind of money. Before Harry came to the wizarding world, he didn't have two pennies to rub together. But now Ron wants him to feel guilty for having money, for inheriting money from his dead parents. That's not okay. So, moving forward, we find the trio visiting with Hagrid. Well, not really visiting because they're not allowed actually out of the school with the security and stuff, but they speak to him during their Care of Magical Creatures class. And of course, Hagrid's a mess because the trial for Buckbeak's going forward. It's what happens. And as they're heading back to the castle, Malfoy and his two trusty sidekicks, Crabbe and Goyle, they're sniggering and making jokes, like, oh, you think he could pull it together? It's not like it's his dog or anything. And Hermione actually punches him this time as well, like she does in canon, but I don't feel it's justified here. I can understand wanting to be angry at somebody making fun of someone you care about or thinking it's their fault. But I don't think she was justified in actually punching him in the jaw. And it just seemed angry for no reason. Not necessarily angry for no reason, but excessively angry in the situation to me. And Harry actually tries to get there. He doesn't make it in time before the punch lands. He does send an apologetic glance to Draco, who is like kind of stunned. But before that, he actually recognizes that Draco's showing a bit of remorse or regret for the things that he is saying. And this could speak to Harry getting to know Draco behind the mask. This could speak to Draco's starting to change in his ideals. But Harry could see that behind that fake sneer, there was regret in Draco's eyes. But also, what could he have done to potentially stop his father on a crusade? So I don't know that she was completely justified in punching Draco. But I do like that shift in perspective that Harry is actually looking at Draco and can see the change in Draco. And Hermione is having a rough roll. She also stormed out of divination class. It's one of those... She's angry. And Harry actually, he notices the fairly impressive bruise, but he's also concerned if Draco's going to be mad at him. They're not supposed to meet for a couple more days, but he wants to check on him. He wants to make sure that Draco's all right, and if they're all right. And then Harry goes to his appointment, or not really appointment, but he goes to Patronus lessons with Lupin, and they talk about the things that have been going on, and they actually talk about the idea of Harry doing some independent study because he really wished he could actually drop care magical creatures. And Harry learns a lot of information. He doesn't have to be enrolled in the class to take the OWL if you contact the ministry. And he gets, the idea to do these extra classes, and he learns a little bit more about his mom and Sirius and those extra subjects. And he's like, maybe after Quidditch. And Remus actually goes, I know we're not supposed to play favorites, but I bet 5 gallons you'd win against Professor Snape. He seems to think Mr. Malfoy can pull it out of the bag. So, let's win! And he recognizes the different... Harry seems to think that the Professor Snape that Lupin knows to the Professor Snape that Harry knows are 2 separate people. And he actually says Severus really isn't as bad as he makes out to be. He just has a reputation to uphold. So there we are, back again to those masks. Those expectations placed on people around us. And then kind of turns to, speaking of reputations to uphold, Draco Malfoy. Care to share? And of course Harry's like, he's all embarrassed, hot cheeks and all of that. We're just friends. And you get this sweet moment. He's like, I'd say that just friends is baffling enough in itself. You can tell me anything, Harry. There's no judgment here. And Remus is being straight up. He's like, if there's something you want to talk about, I'm here. It's, this is a safe space for you. And Harry just kind of tumbles it all out. Like, we're friends. That he's actually really helpful with all of this. Blah, blah, blah. And we get that inner thought of Remus of, oh, Cub, you have no idea, do you? I think it's just so cute. And that mention of, not letting all the prejudice about Slytherins get in his way. More students could stand to do that. But Harry, you must be careful. He is still a Malfoy after all. And it calls that note of, does the name make a man or does a man make the name? And we also have to take into account that he is still Lucius Malfoy's son. And we recognize that Lucius Malfoy is an awful man. And we get the first real mention of Narcissa here. She was never as cruel. Certainly no light witch, but never needlessly cruel. She always thought very highly of family. And Harry kind of pushes the idea of, Narcissa and Draco are both scared of Lucius. And I think that kind of pushes us into the scene later on where Remus actually flews down to talk to Severus. And they talk about how Harry and Draco have become friends. And it was definitely more than a bit of a crush. but he doesn't want to give Severus a heart attack about how close they are, or the idea that Harry even has a crush on Draco. And they go on to speak about, of course, Harry being careful. He understands that Lucius is not to be reckoned with, but he asks if he thinks Narcissa could be turned. Snape's response is, Narcissa will do whatever will keep her son the safest. She laid down her life for him in a heartbeat. And he's tried to figure out if there was a way to remove Narcissa and Draco from Lucius should the worst come to pass. She does follow out of fear, not love, so now we've got it reconfirmed that she is afraid. We've had Draco speak to Harry earlier in the story about what Lucius does when how Draco sees his dad beating on his mom when the Dementors get near, and Harry has confirmed that they fear Lucius. Now Severus has just reconfirmed it. Okay. He does mention that he's tried to convince her to have a contingency plan in place, but she won't hear of it in case Lucius finds out and decides to punish her for it. So, they both mention, or he does mention that she will never come to Dumbledore. And Remus actually reveals that Harry won't come to Dumbledore either. And this kind of intrigues Severus. He's inquiring, what do you mean? And I love Remus here. His secrets aren't mine to share. He's being that safe space. He is not revealing the information that Harry has shared with him. But he does mention that Harry trusts the headmaster about as much as we do these days. Perhaps even less. So, in the pretty much last scene, we have back to Draco and Harry in the Transfiguration classroom, and they're playing cards. For all that Draco had promised to give Harry pureblood lessons, they usually never got around to it. They sit and they would play cards and talk about Quidditch, school, the future. And Harry found a comfort in that he was able to tell Draco things that he hadn't even told Ron and Hermione. He didn't judge Harry when he said something selfish or a little bit cruel. It was nice not to have to guard his language. And I like how Draco is able to talk to Harry as well. They talk about, Draco wants to be a healer, but everyone expects him to become a potions master. And it kind of gives the idea of, the expectations that are laid upon each of them by those around them without actually talking to them and figuring out what they want, what they need. So they can kind of let those masks drop, and they have a little bit of a go back and forth. They talk about the different types of healings and stuff, but then they talk about Quidditch and things like that. And Draco actually warns him to be careful. The Slytherins really want to win. He's not sure how far they'll go. And it's kind of just one of those, be careful. They're not rivals. They're not political pawns. They're just two boys finding solace in each other's understanding. And I guess our mini scene for the last scene is Harry noticing Crookshanks and the Grim outside, skirting the edge of the Forbidden Forest. And Harry doesn't immediately panic. He is slightly... He's like, oh, wait a minute. He's like, what? What do you mean? He's like, what on earth could it mean? Could it really be an omen of death? If Crookshanks could see it too, maybe it was just a regular dog. He forced himself away from the window and thinks it's probably nothing. Cats couldn't see Grims. Even cats as smart as Crookshanks seem to be. And he just kind of lets it go. It's like, I'm not worried about it. It is what it is. So, while we may have a punch in Chapter 8, Chapter 8 is not featuring any, daring escapes or duels or anything, but it is a punch heard around the castle. We do have this kind of turning point. Harry is beginning to live for himself and not just survive. Boundaries are shifting, alliances are forming, and trust is slowly being redefined. So, next time we'll see how these emotional undercurrents collide with the ever-present politics within Hogwarts. Until next time, may your magic serve you well.